The Hilton sale is on. Now through September 29th, you can save up to 20% on stays this fall and beyond. Long weekends, last-minute getaways, holiday gatherings. There's a Hilton stay for all of them. More moments, more experiences, more destinations. Now 20% off for a limited time because it matters where you stay. Don't wait. Book by September 29th and save up to 20% at Hilton.com. Terms apply. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for listening in this afternoon, the third week of September. My next guest is a really good friend and someone who is known to everyone around the country for the amazing job that he did for Donald Trump in his very first year in office back in 2017 as the spokesman for the White House, Sean Spicer, or should I say, Sean, Captain Sean Spicer.
You have 10 more days, Steve. It's good to be with you, but yeah, that'll be nice.
Tell us how that all came about. So, if you haven't heard the news, folks, Sean you're in the Navy Reserve?
That's correct.
Okay, and so you have been elevated, or has it happened yet, or is it still in the works?
So the way it works in the military, well, for officers, is there's a selection board. They meet every year, and I was selected for promotion. And then what happens is, at least in the Navy, I can't speak to the other branches as well.
Yes,
there's a list that comes out. You get ranked in your list, depending on, and then you'll love this. It's all it's very, very fiscally appropriate, Steve. They rank you and you promote throughout the fiscal year. So October 1 is the beginning of the government's fiscal year by the amount of money so there's, the first one on the list, and I luckily am first on the list, which is kind of cool because that October 1st, the first person always promotes the first day of the new fiscal year. But the second person could promote, the list comes out every month. So in November, there'll be a list saying these are the captains, these are the 06s, which is the captains that are now promoted to this rank. And so if you've been selected for promotion, you will promote within that fiscal year, but it largely depends on when other captains are retiring or the funds become available. So if there were 10, in my case, there were 4 captains selected in my group, and I was number 1 on the list, so I know I'm October 1st. But the number 2 guy could be the first quarter, the first month of the second quarter. He could be November. So I say that because if anyone's listening that's been in the military, you know that if you're trying to plan a promotion party, which which is why Steve knows about
right.
that
I wanted to have one for you.
You can plan it. If you're number 2, you kind of have to wing it.
Yeah. Okay. So, Sean, I'm just looking at because you and I have been friends a long time. I did not realize that you had this military career. You joined, I'm looking at your profile, that you joined the Navy Reserve in 1999?
1999, right? Yeah. And because of my civilian career, again, it was just my choice. I always chose to keep politics out.
Right.
I didn't want anyone ever talking to, and so I went above and beyond. It's funny because until I think it was the end of my tenure at the RNC, beginning of the White House, when it was obviously a lot more public then, I didn't even include it in my bio because and a lot of people, some people in the military said, why are you not doing that? And I said, because I never want to cross streams, and I never want anyone in the military saying I'm politicizing or vice versa.
Right.
And I didn't want anyone questioning my service. So it's your
that's
point.
so great. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about our favorite person, Donald J. Trump, who you know as well as anyone. And I'm going to give you kind of a hypothesis, and you're the best person to ask about this because, I remember when you were doing the press conferences for Trump, and then when Trump would come in front of the press in his first term, in his first couple of years, one of the things that struck me, Sean, and you've spoken about this, was the outright hostility of the media towards Trump. And it was actually, I thought, really poor form, they treated him very shabbily. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, put it this way. I'll flip the question on you. I don't know that you could objectively find a person, regardless of their place on the political spectrum, that wouldn't agree that the media is and was extremely hostile to him. I don't even think you have to be a partisan to admit that. That's a fact.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I always had so much admiration for you because, boy, did you take it. I was like, how do you do that? How do you just take these?
So,
boom, boom.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And the funny part was yesterday, there was something that you and I talked about in the past. The president was signing this executive order on the gold card. And I thought, well, why don't I go over? I have a press pass. So yesterday was the first time I was in the press pool. I literally questioned the president of the United States yesterday, and I posted it up on social media today on my Instagram page. And I was just like, it was so fun to be able to be like on the other side. He's like, Sean, do you have a question for me? And I'm like, yes, sir. And it was funny because Jonathan Karl, he's going off on Jonathan Karl. You're terrible. You're the worst reporter ever. And these guys are coming at him. And then he goes to me, and I'm like, good afternoon, Mr. President. And it was just...
Well, the point I was driving at, by the way, is that, I was at one of the president's press conferences a month or so ago, and it was a very different feel in the room from the first term. I think maybe the media has accepted the fact that he really is president. He's going to be here for 3 more years. And so I'm glad to see that they're at least, they're still hostile, but they're treating him at least more respectfully than they were in his first term. I don't know. What do you think?
So I think there's something to that. Okay, you're right. There's a less, they recognize a couple things. One, there's less of an attempt to become a YouTube star the way that an April Ryan or a Jim Acosta did, where I'm going to try to make a name for myself. So there's a little less of that, number one. And I agree with you. And then a little less, like even John Karl, if the president talked to him about what a terrible person and reporter he was, at the end said, thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate you taking the questions. Like it was like, you're right. There's an acceptance. Like, okay, it's going to be like this for 3 more years. But I would posit that there is a third, in my opinion, bigger issue at stake, which is the dilution of them. So as I mentioned, I was there yesterday. I was sitting in the thing. You've seen Brian Glenn from Real America's Voice. You've seen people from the Daily Caller. Reagan Reese was standing next to me yesterday asking a multitude of questions. She did a great profile on the president from the Daily Caller the other day. And when I say this, what I mean is, so people understand this. When I was press secretary, it was literally Washington Post, New York Times. Like,
exactly.
There was a new John Gizzi from Newsmax was there, but Newsmax wasn't even what it is today. There really wasn't. They didn't have a TV presence. There was no Real America's Voice. There was no Right Side Broadcasting. Daily Caller existed, and they had a correspondent, but not to the robust nature that they do now. The Daily Wire's got a correspondent. Turning Point USA has a correspondent there.
Right.
And so I would argue that there's been an infection of ideas in the briefing room. Where yesterday, like I said, the president did call on NBC News. He called on the Washington Post. He called on NBC. But he also called on me. He called on Reagan Reese. He called, so when I say it's a dilution of the impact that they have, number one. And number two, it's an infection. So yesterday, I questioned the president about the gold card, about visa programs. I talked to him about the Virginia election. I talked to him about, last night I had the Fed share. And so, it's not that they aren't serious issues, but all the media wanted to talk about yesterday was Jonathan Karl cared about his own station, ABC News, and attacks on Jimmy Kimmel because Jimmy Kimmel insulted Charlie Kirk and MAGA supporters. So they care about them and themselves and their issues. And during my tenure, it was always Russia, 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 Mike Flynn this. And now you have other reporters. Like I said, Reagan Reese was talking about some great issues. And it changes the nature of those interactions, and the American people can hear about things that aren't entirely what the left-wing liberal legacy media wants to talk about.
So just got about a minute left. I'm talking to the great Sean Spicer. You know him from his duty as the president's press secretary in his first term, and is now on the other side of that microphone. One last question, Sean, and that is just the way that Trump deals with the press. How do you kind of compare and contrast how it is today versus how he's, because I think he handles the press masterfully now. I think he was much more combative in his first term, but what is your reaction to that?
Yeah, it's a brilliant assessment, because Steve, you're putting your finger on something really important. There's a level of confidence that he has where he doesn't, and also a command and presence of the office, because look, we were all new coming in, and I admit I came up through very traditional sources. So I was like, okay, this is how the interaction works. And I was actually talking about this with some of the media yesterday, like, oh, this is how many pool. When I called yesterday and I said to the folks in the lower press office, I said, could I join the pool today? They're like, yeah, absolutely. That would have never been allowed, previously. And there's a command and sure, he'd be glad to do this. He'd be glad to have an interview. He'd be glad to do this. And he understands the tools at his disposal. He has a level of confidence and command that, frankly, no newcomer could ever have in their first term. And you're putting your finger on something so brilliant, because I've been fascinated by this difference between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0.
Great minds think alike. Well, Captain Spicer, thank you so much for joining. I know how busy you are. Really appreciate you coming on the More Money Show.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
Corporate megastores are spending millions lobbying D.C. politicians on one-sided policies that send small businesses tumbling. They want to enact harmful credit card mandates that take resources away from your local credit union and community bank, leaving Main Street businesses with less access to credit, making it harder for your family to pay for everyday goods like gas and groceries. Tell Congress to guard your card and oppose the Durbin Marshall credit card mandates.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.